Invigor Book and Buy ends November 14th. Run, don't walk to invigorbookandbuy.ca to find out how to get $30 off per bag. Terms and conditions apply.
We're continuing our journey talking to the 2025 class of the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. Joining us right now is Dr. Peter Sikkema. Dr. Sikkema, thanks so much for joining us here today.
You're most welcome.
And of course, again, congratulations on being in this year's Hall of Fame class. That's I can't imagine how that honor feels.
It's actually rather humbling. I thoroughly enjoyed my career, Sean, and I did what I enjoyed, and I'm being recognized for what I enjoyed doing.
You're of course a staple in Canada, a leader in the area of weed science. Did you always know that you wanted to go into weed science?
No, I didn't. I really ended up in this position by serendipity. I happened to work for the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Food between my third and fourth year at the University of Guelph. And I worked with an individual by the name of Harvey Wright. And I did some experiments on Group 5 resistant pigweed control in Brant County. And Harvey Wright actually suggested that I do graduate work with Dr. Jack Decker at the University of Guelph. And the rest is history.
So at what point did you kind of realize that your work in weed science could really make a difference for on-farm profitability and just long-term success for the farmers?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest contributions that we did make to weed science, and I want to stress that other weed scientists have done really good work in this area as well. And that is how rapidly crops can lose yield due to weed interference. And based on the work that we've done, we can document a yield loss in corn from spraying on Tuesday morning compared to Monday morning. And most farmers do not appreciate how rapidly you lose yield and therefore profitability by delayed herbicide application.
Yeah. Is there something about weed science that, like, I've interviewed you many times from an extension perspective, and we've been digging into some sort of an issue and trying to provide, really good information and timely solutions for growers. But what is it about weed science that you love so much? From a core perspective, like that really kept you captivated throughout your career?
And that for sure changed over my career, Sean. And I think today I'm 67 years old. What absolutely fascinates me is the interaction between chemistry and biology and how that affects weed management in the field. And just subtle changes in the chemical structure of a herbicide have a dramatic impact on field performance and how you use those molecules to your best advantage as a farmer to maximize crop yield, minimize weed interference, minimize crop injury, and maximize profitability. So, yeah, as I went along in my career, I'm just fascinated by it.
Yeah, definitely evolving. Like you think back to when glyphosate tolerant crops first came onto the scene. It was sort of, there was an attitude of, we won't need any other in-crop herbicide ever. Like, this is amazing. This is a magic pill. And boy, it created a whole, you look in the latter half of your career, you think about all the work that's been done in weed resistance and trying to manage that and the development of it. It just big time changes throughout the spectrum of your career throughout the years.
You're absolutely right. I think the first big change for me in my career was the registration of post-emergence grass herbicides in corn in 1994. They were the sulfonylurea herbicides. It was Elimin Ultima at that time. And up to 1994, if farmers didn't have good control of grasses, the time that the corn emerged in the field We had no post-emergence options for grass control in corn. And then in 1997, as you alluded to earlier, Sean, there was a watershed moment in weed management, and that was the registration of Roundup Ready soybean in Ontario. And it was followed by Roundup Ready corn in 2001. And I can remember a grower telling me that they didn't need weed scientists anymore shortly after the introduction of Roundup Ready crops because they had sprayed their field one, two, or three times during the growing season, and their fields were spotless at harvest time, right? And so, the perception is that weed science had been addressed, and there wasn't really a need for any further research.
Did you question, like when the farmer said that at the time, were you resolute that, oh, no, like this field will be here forever? Or did you question yourself whether there was a future for weed science?
I wished you didn't ask me that question. But anyways, there was a manuscript published in 1997. I was 3 years into my position at Ridgetown campus as the person responsible for weed management and field crops. And in that manuscript, it was published in Weed Technology. I was a young guy. There was these, highly respected weed scientists that published a manuscript saying that it was unlikely that glyphosate-resistant weeds would evolve anywhere on the globe because of the complexity of the herbicide and its mode of action. And I wished I could tell you, Sean, that I immediately thought those scientists were wrong. And I thought there was a possibility that they were right. Obviously, history tells us that that was not the case, and there's numerous weed species that have evolved resistance to glyphosate since then. But I can't say that I was prophetic at all, and I, predicted that there would be widespread evolution of glyphosate-resistant weeds, and there has been.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, Peter, what role have mentors and colleagues and graduate students that have worked under you? Talk about the role that they've played in shaping your career and some of your research approach.
Yeah, I just can't thank some of the more senior weed scientists in Ontario when I started in the mid 1990s. And specifically, I want to thank Dr. Al Hamill, who was my supervisor for my PhD program at the University of Western Ontario, and Dr. Clarence Swanton, who was the chair of the Department of Plant Agriculture when I became a faculty member in the department. And both of those gentlemen were just instrumental in terms of coaching me early in my career, and I can't thank them enough. I'd also like to thank Harvey Wright, who was my supervisor when I was a summer student in 1980. He was the one that saw potential in me and recommended that I do graduate studies. And
go ahead,
so
Peter.
Sean, sorry for you also mentioned graduate students, and I've had the privilege of advising more than 40 graduate students in my career. And it has been my privilege to work with these incredible young people. They're bright, they're academically gifted, they're hardworking. And I think when you do graduate studies, you think that you're going to learn from your supervisor, your mentor. And in reality is I've learned so much from my graduate students. And I always tell them that if I knew the answer to the research question that I'm asking them to work on, if I knew that answer, I wouldn't ask them to do research on that topic. And so I learn from my graduate students from the incredible work they do. And it's really interesting to me the impact that the results from some of the graduate students' research, the impact it's had on Ontario agriculture. Within years of them completing their graduate studies, management practices on the farm changed completely based on what they discovered in their graduate student research. So it's really rewarding to work with these people.
Peter, what does it take to be a great academic in your mind?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. And I think it is a very individual thing. Everybody works within their own personality, whether it is, how they set up their research program, how they teach in class, how they do extension work. I think you can't try to replicate what some other faculty member does just because your personality is different. And so you have to work within your own personality and you have to figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And so for me, I think what's really benefited me is I happened to be organized and I've got a good memory, right? I don't claim to be smart, but I'm organized. I have a good memory. And I think that's helped me out tremendously, whether it is setting up the research programs for my research technicians, setting up the course of study for my graduate students, and so on. So I think everybody has to work within their own personality.
Yeah, it's interesting you use the word personality because I don't think that's the word that a lot of people would assume. Like I would have thought you would have said, well, you've got to have an analytical mind, be like to dig into to numbers and quantitative equations and process, and obviously the teaching is there. But you got to really understand that you want to do research. That's not exactly what you said. You provide more of a qualitative attribute, which kind of surprises me. But that's interesting.
Yeah, and I think all of the things you said, Sean, you need to have as well. You
Yeah,
have to, enjoy answering questions that you don't have the answer to, and then, following the scientific method, set up experiments to address that question. But yeah, I would still, whether it's teaching, advising grad students, sharing information with farmers, I think you have to work within your own personality and not try to replicate what other faculty members have done in the past. I respect them. I think they're great people. And you have to figure out your own niche where you can make a contribution.
yeah. Peter, I believe you were the first in Canada to confirm a glyphosate-resistant weed. Is that true?
That is correct. And it was glyphosate resistant giant ragweed from seed collected in 2008.
What was your reaction when you discovered it and you confirmed it? Was it like, because this is your area of research, right? So you're sort of, personally, you could be like, yes, like I discovered, but then you're like, no, this is not good. Like, was it a bit of a mixed reaction? What were your thoughts?
For sure, it was a mixed reaction, more of the latter,
Yeah.
that no, this isn't good for Ontario agriculture and agriculture in Canada. Glyphosate is an amazing, cost-effective herbicide, and the evolution of glyphosate-resistant weeds has increased the cost of weed management for Ontario farmers. It's resulted in a decrease in crop yield where in affected fields, and it's reduced profitability for Ontario farmers and beyond. It was a really mixed reaction on my part. It was kind of a threatening time for me personally to be involved in weed science. I remember working with the communication people at the University of Guelph on a news release that a glyphosate-resistant weed had been found in Ontario. And I remember really clearly, Sean, opening my inbox on a Monday morning in May of 2009, and they called me a fearmonger, an alarmist, and they appealed to my sense of professionalism in terms of our documentation of a glyphosate-resistant weed. So it was a pretty emotional thing at the time. As time went on, obviously it's been a real thing. It's been found across Ontario from Essex County in the southwest corner to Glengarry County, adjacent to the Quebec border. So it's real, but there was there were people that weren't happy with me documenting and releasing it.
So the industry was given some pushback on you.
You are correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting, and and was the I guess if you think about to that very moment how the trajectory has changed, as you said, where do we go from here when it comes to weed control? And obviously, you mentioned earlier, timing of weed control is so critical, and weeds are constantly trying to rob us of yield and all of those kinds of things. But what does the future look like for weed control?
Yeah, a really good question. And I think for the next generation of weed scientists, it will be far more focused on integrated weed management. It will be focused on incorporating far more complexity into our crop production and weed management programs. And it could entail things like having diverse crop rotations instead of having continuous corn, continuous soybean, or even a corn soybean rotation, which are really two summer annual crops, and it's not that diverse in terms of weed management. It could be increasing seeding rates, narrowing row widths, incorporating cover crops into your weed management programs, the use of harvest weed seed control, and all sorts of other weed management techniques. I think herbicides will continue to be a huge component of weed management going forward, but it will be one component of many different tactics that growers use for weed management.
Yeah, you just look at where we are today, where we've, from a chemistry perspective, what's old is new again. And,
True.
the struggle to try to bring new products to market, that's, a regulatory, that's a hurdle, and the costs are going up. We also have branded products. We've got generic products. You just look at the decisions that the farmer has to make heading into any sort of a growing season, just from the tackling weed issue. It is incredibly complex with a lot of different combinations to choose from.
You're absolutely right. And I can remember, meeting with farmers one-on-one, trying to set up weed management programs for their farm. And it's difficult.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to consider in terms of what's going to be the most effective weed management strategy on a field by field basis. So it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of knowledge to put together those weed management programs.
Now, Peter, I know you're a pretty humble guy, pretty modest, but I want you to remove that hat for a second. What do you think Peter Sikkema's legacy is going to be when it comes to your field?
Yeah, so really interesting question, Sean. I think that my contribution to weed management has just been to incrementally advance the science of weed management over my career. And you build on research from previous years and try to just increase the knowledge so that we can develop, field by field weed management programs. In terms of my contribution, I really think, there's a number of areas that I think we've made a contribution. One of them we mentioned earlier, and that is in fields with heavy weed pressure. It shocks me still to this day how rapidly you lose yield and therefore profitability due to delayed application of post-emergence herbicides. In terms of other contributions, for sure, the work that we've done on glyphosate-resistant weeds has made a real impact in Ontario. I think, with the weed management programs that we've developed, instead of yield loss being 75% or greater in affected fields, it's less than 5%. And that's just a real contribution to weed management. When I started work on weed management in dry beans were considered to be uniform across market classes in terms of how they responded to herbicides. And I think we were one of the first groups in the world to develop market class specific weed management programs. And you adjust your weed control program, whether you're growing azuki beans, white beans, or kidney beans, and you use different strategies in those different crops. So those would be some of the areas. We've worked in multiple other areas where we've made contributions, but those would be some that come to mind.
Yeah, how much collaboration? Like, when we see a published paper, we'll see that can be multi-researcher collaboration across academic institutions. That's just on the published work. Talk about the collaboration you have with some of your peers and how that works.
Yeah, and I'm a better weed scientist because of my colleagues. I want to stress that right away. I've learned so much from my fellow colleagues, whether that be weed scientists in Canada, North America, and across the globe. And I just can't thank them enough for the collaborations we've had and how much they've helped me address weed control problems in Ontario. Many times, the weed issues that we have in Ontario have occurred someplace else across the globe. And by having relationships with weed scientists across the globe, it helped me to develop weed control strategies more rapidly for Ontario farmers.
Yeah, it's using that info from somewhere else and building upon it and applying to your own geography or crops of focus, right?
I really like the term you use, Sean. You take the information from other geographic areas around the globe, and then you adapt it to your situation wherever you're doing your research. You can't just transport it from there to here. Chances are they have different herbicides and so on. And so you just can't transport it. But boy, you can learn from them and you can address those issues far more rapidly if you have those collaborations.
Yeah, people can get bogged down and it doesn't apply here because of this, or it doesn't work because of that. Yeah, the different soil type. And yes, all those things are a given. But if you could just pull one thing, just one little sliver of something that assists you in understanding your own challenge that you're trying to tackle, that is definitely a win, and it moves and advances the solutions a lot faster in my opinion, for sure. So Peter, you're still you've had a long career, very young at heart, I might add, looking very fit. Things are looking good. What advice would you give to a younger, more wet behind the ears Peter Sikkema?
Yeah, I think my advice would be work with everybody you can. You can learn from all of your colleagues in weed science. I th I think make sure you are connected with primary producers. Make sure you're connected with crop consultants, ag retailers, people that work for the herbicide manufacturers. I think if you work for growers, you're going to be able to identify the weed management issues on the farm. And if you're working on weed management issues on the farm, you're going to be able to get research funding to address those issues because they affect farm profitability. And grower organizations such as the Grain Farmers of Ontario and the Ontario Bean Growers have supported my research program generously over my career. And I think one of the reasons why is because I was connected to the industry. You know what the issues are on the farm, you work on them, and by doing that, you increase farm profitability. And if you do that, they're going to give you money for your research program.
Yeah. And as a researcher in today's world, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to fund your different research projects and programs, correct?
That is true. And that
Understated.
is
I'm probably
really,
understating that, Peter.
and that's really changed over my career. When I started, there was, funding that was just given to your research program because you had a position, let's say at Ridgetown campus. That has totally evaporated over my career.
Yeah.
And now you have to raise funds for everything in terms of your research program. Most people don't appreciate that I think of myself as a businessman. I've been a university professor for, more than 35 years. I can remember I was asked to do a presentation for the Kiwanis Club in Ridgetown, and I said, I'm a businessman. I sell one product, it's research data, and I have to be better or equivalent to my fellow weed scientists at Maine campus, at Michigan State University, Purdue, Ohio State University. I mean, the border is pretty fluid. And if I'm not as good or better than my colleagues at these other research institutions, I'm simply not going to get the research funding. And so, yeah, that's the way I see it.
I think that's a piece of the puzzle in a role like yours that a lot of people don't understand and don't see that competitive nature of that. So I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, the ceremony's coming up. I think it's actually this weekend in Victoria, and it's going to be a great ceremony. It's always a great evening with people from across the Canadian agricultural landscape, and they're going to unveil a portrait of you, Dr. Peter Sikkema, and it'll be official that you are inducted into the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. What do you expect your emotion is going to be, Peter, or your thoughts going through your head when you finally do see that portrait and the crowd gives a big standing ovation?
Yeah, I think a lot of things will be going through my mind. One is, I think there's many other people that would deserve that recognition. I just happen to be in a more visible role than many other people, and therefore I am being recognized. I will think to myself, I just did what I enjoyed, and I'm being recognized for it. It was never hard work. It didn't take any effort to get up in the morning and go to work. I came to work, and it was fun to do what I've done. The other thing that will go through my mind is it's been a privilege to give back to Canada. I am a first generation Canadian. My parents are from the Netherlands. Especially my dad went through the hunger winter of 1945, and it was Canadians that liberated the Netherlands. And as things turned out, my parents decided to immigrate to Canada. And as a first generation Canadian, it's been my privilege to give back to Canada after they did so much for my parents in the Netherlands. So I would thank them.
Well put, Peter, and we thank you because honestly, your contribution to weed science and just the industry in general, I think if we were smart with a calculator and a spreadsheet, if we were to calculate the amount of money that you have saved farmers, the value you've created on the farm because of that increased yield, because we actually understand the timeliness and how to tackle some of those weed challenges that are out in our fields with some of the crops that we're growing. It is absolutely amazing. That'd be a staggering number. And I just want to, on behalf of farmers from across, not only just Ontario, but I think the country, thank you very much for your contribution to the industry. And again, congratulations on being an inductee into the 2025 class of the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much, Sean. It's been my privilege to chat with you this morning.